that we have the principle of existential validation. Who can explain the principle of existential validation? Nobody? You wouldn't even try with a 10-foot pole? Yes?
Oh, you're a try. Well, the essentially balance means that you can become a beneficial person in the world. That means that you live by essentially valid values, which will result in being a loving, considerate, harmonious, grateful
individual. Very good, thank you. Now you see the principle of existential validation was formulated by Jesus Christ. Do you know that? You're shaking your head.
I like that.
You like that?
There, what I see is the coming together of the world and valuing it what is.
How did Jesus formulate the principle of existential validation?
by the fruit thereof.
Yeah.
By the fruits ye shall know them. Now, when we understand the principle of existential validation, then all religious differences, all cultural differences from all the world are transcended. There is no need to worry about Orientalism, Western philosophy, this religion or that religion, because whatever is valid anywhere in the world, in any system of values or thoughts or teachings, is subject to a simple principle, namely the principle of existential validation. Whether it's Vedanta or Ramakrishna, Satchidananda, or Taoism, or Zen Buddhism, or Christian Science, or Catholicism, or Judaism, or Mohammedanism, or Sufism, whatever values can be validated become acceptable. Now, how do we validate values? Existentially. Now, Jesus said, by their fruits ye shall know them. And Tom has explained to us what the fruits are which we are looking for. Whatever is life-enhancing, harmony-inducing, liberating, integrative, healing, fulfilling, and making it possible for man to realize his best potentialities in life, that is valid. So we don't have to be sectarian or chauvinistic about religions, about East and West, about anything. Everything becomes acceptable to us, provided it is existentially validable. So we don't have to worry whether people say, oh, you are a Zen Buddhist, or you are this, or you are that. It doesn't matter where a particular value or understanding comes from, as long as it is existentially validable. Yes.
Would you say then that religion serves primarily to give enhanced self-confirmatory ideation and would be operational answers versus over existential validation?
I don't understand the question.
I'm not sure that either.
Yes.
But my own sense of it was you were talking last week about self-confirmatory ideation.
Yes.
And this is a cycle that you get into that never has any end in establishing existential validation. And I think one of my other responses was that this is what religion seems to be. It simply proves what you want to prove and cycles around in that sphere rather than breaking beyond to some kind of existential universal framework.
There is everywhere, all over the world, religion has religions. I think perhaps all religions start out as some form of discipline designed to transform man and to heal him and to liberate him. But very soon it tends to degenerate into an intellectual system where the aim changes. And instead of a transforming effect on individuals, it becomes a ritual and a creed. So I think every religion was based on a desire for understanding of the greater issues of life. Sub specie eternitatis. What does that mean? Beg your pardon? Eternal suspense? No. No. It is a viewpoint in the context of eternity. Man trying to understand life in the context of eternity. That's how religions usually start. And the aim is individual liberation and transformation. But then they become institutionalized and formalized, and the aim changes from transformation to information. For instance, Jesus Christ can be appreciated as a model of the perfect man. In that case, our aim would be to become transformed in a manner which would make it possible for us to become Christly. We would want to attain the character of the Christ through right understanding of what he understood and was teaching. But if we are religious, then what we are doing is we are studying about Jesus Christ. And then we are worshipping the person and developing various rituals and satisfying ourselves emotionally with practicing certain rituals. So the transforming effect of religion is gradually lost. The existential impact of religion is gradually lost, and it becomes ritualized and formalized. And instead of a discipline, a transforming discipline, it becomes a ritual. And then we can be religious, and it will have no impact on our character. But that goes for many other things in life. Heidegger speaks of a trivialization process. Everything valuable, whether in philosophy or science or religion, has a tendency to become trivialized. So we are now coming to answer your original question. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I had it. The contrast between God as existential reality versus
Religious symbol or a theological abstraction. You see? In religion, God is a symbol which indicates certain thoughts which we can have about God and the teachings. It's a symbol. For theologians, it is an intellectual abstraction. But in existential metapsychiatry, God is a name indicating absolute reality. And the aim is to become consciously united with this reality, so that it would have a transforming impact on our consciousness. And as a result of that, we would become a more complete and fulfilled, realized individuals. Yes? So when we talk about God and Jesus Christ and quote from the Bible, we are not talking about religion. We are seeking to cognize reality in an existential way. Now, I glimpsed a little remark here. Somebody saw me wipe my nose with a handkerchief and accused me of having a cold. This is a great danger in studying psychosomatic medicine. that we become judgmental towards people who develop certain problems, or, you see, we must be very careful not to judge and not to condemn or not to sneer or not to look down at people who happen to have psychosomatic problems. Because even if there is a trace of that in the back of our mind, this will immediately disqualify us from being able to help anybody. The slightest trace of judgmentalism in the consciousness of the therapist will immediately disqualify it as a therapist. Now, how can we be non-judgmental if we can see how an individual is destroying himself?
We consider it in terms of whether or not it is existentially valid. It's not necessarily destructive, it's existentially invalid.
Very good. Right. Now let me just enlarge on that. What do you think is the difference between a judgment and an observation?
The existence of the person making it.
Could you explain?
In the judgment, that I have something to say. In the observation, I'm just describing what is.
Right. Very good.
Question.
Yes. When we make judgments, judgment implies approval or disapproval. Observation is devoid of that issue. Observation has its aim clarification. We observe, we discern certain meanings, and our aim is to clarify and to help the patient to become aware of it. And there is no element of approval or disapproval connected with it. This, I cannot emphasize it strongly enough how important that is, because as long as there is judgment, the patient will not be able to focus on what we are saying, because nobody likes to be condemned or approved of or disapproved of. So we must have a clear understanding that a phenomenological analysis doesn't deal with judgment, but with observation. And the method of hermeneutic clarification requires us to have a loving, non-judgmental attitude towards all phenomena.
Would you clarify hermeneutic?
Hermeneutic is from the Greek hermes, which is light. That's shedding light, clarifying. The method in metapsychiatry is hermeneutic. We don't give interpretations, we don't judge, we don't condemn, we don't approve or disapprove, we clarify. Let me take an example. Suppose we discover that somebody is very envious. A patient is envious. Well, we discern that he is envious. Now, if we say to him, you are envious, and if in our back of our minds we say, you shouldn't be envious, then what will happen? He will become worse. He will be even more envious. And he will not be able to free himself of envy. Because nobody will improve for your sake. Just because you don't like somebody being envious, this envious individual will not do you a favor of stopping being envious. So we must be able to observe whatever invalid values an individual reveals in a totally non-judgmental way and communicate to the patient our observation in such a way that as far as we are concerned, he is perfectly free to remain envious. Except that we have noticed that it is hurting him.
What you just said strikes me as stating a very basic problem. The minute one observes that the values are invalid, isn't there an implicit judgment there by calling them invalid?
If you are religious.
No, I mean in communication to the other person.
No, it is no. You have to know that people have a right to exhibit invalid values. People have a right to be sick.
Right, but by the very act of becoming aware or saying to oneself, those are invalid values,
Yes.
there is a judgment.
Yeah. If you're a should thinker.
But in that,
What is a should thinker?
then you decide if they're invalid.
No, you don't.
Tactile word.
You don't
Invalid
decide.
judgmental word is what I'm saying.
No. Invalid is judgmental with most people, but a well-trained metapsychiatric therapist, to him it is not judgmental.
Right. So I think you were starting to get into how one can communicate non-judgmental invalidity.
Right.
But that's
Invalid doesn't mean it's a no-no. It is hurtful
hurtful to you. All right.
to you,
All right.
but I don't demand of you to change yourself. You see, the therapist cannot make demands on the patient. He cannot even demand that the patient get well. Don't do me a favor, as the saying goes.
But then
Yes?
I was going to say that what we would consider invalid, that is not received as invalid by the
Right, of course.
There's something that is serving a purpose to him.
Yes,
It fits into his life. And
yes,
He thinks that it works.
yes. But you can show him that he's hurting himself.
Right. And
Right.
so you help him to understand.
That's right. That's right. And if you don't ask him to change, then he will change. But if you ask him to change, he won't change.
So very problematical.
Yes?
I think what you're getting to is the fact that if we say it's invalid from a certain point of view, it doesn't work. But the invalidity is the fact that it doesn't work.
For you.
Well, you observe that in this client that is just not working.
All
And
right.
that's the invalidity.
That's not invalid for you, the therapist. It's going through the process of guiding him to an awareness of the invalidity for him.
Right. Right.
Well,
why
wouldn't he have been guided already? Because he's after all in your office. He knows it's invalid. You don't really have to make that judgment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be.
Very often, of course, that is. But I cannot emphasize too much that we must respect the patient's right and freedom to be sick. That is very important. And sometimes it is difficult for a therapist to allow the patient the freedom to be sick because he wants to produce results. If the therapist has therapeutic ambition, he will non-verbally communicate a demand to the patient that he get well. And if you do that, you're setting up a resistance. Because no patient will get well for your sake. Only for his own. Yes?
Christ demonstrates that type of approach to people.
I think so. I think, yeah, you see, he always asks people, would you like to be healed? He didn't go over to people and say, look, I am a terrific psychotherapist, I will heal you. He was waiting for people to seek him out, and he would always make sure that they really want to be healed. He did not convince anybody to get well. He had no therapeutic ambition. What was he after? What?
Illumination.
Truth.
Like, kind of you have life that has more abundance.
He wanted to demonstrate the nature of divine reality and its relevancy for man. What were we talking about last week?
We were talking about meanings of phenomenon as opposed to cause and effect. And we're saying that existential metapsychiatry is not interested in what is the cause and what is the effect, but what is the meaning.
Yes.
And we re-emphasize that there's no distinction between mind and body, but that they are one.
Yes.
And that a somatic symptom can is a thought in physical form.
Yes.
And so we look for the meaning of the thought.
Yes. Thank you very much. Did everybody else remember?
Of course.
Huh?
Headaches.
Headaches. You remember the headaches.
Problems are lessons designed for our edification.
Very good.
You explicated that to the story of the man and the headache.
Very good.
Thank God.
What about God?
The true nature of reality is God.
Yeah.
And we have to do some discovery and see if we're understanding economy on our fundamental way of existence and God and the semantic. I think I got it right.
Yes, yes, thank you. You're very close. Yes.
No cigar.
Yes.
And also, I remember that egotism was the biggest cause of most of our symptoms.
Yes. But we just said that there are no causes.
That's the root.
Yes. Where did you get this word egotism? Did we mention egotism last week?
I thought you did.
Yes? I may. But yeah, in metapsychiatry, instead of egotism, we say a very fancy word. Who knows it? Self-confirmatory ideation. Now, what's the value of complicating things in such manner? Could we just say egotism?
You want to get rid of the associations, don't you? The word egotism. You want a pure, it's like you want your own connotations and your own.
Who, me, personally?
Yeah.
In other words, it's just vanity. It's just egotism.
Well, to put it more positively, in order to be heard afresh,
No.
sometimes it's necessary to use new words.
No, man. No. There is a legitimate scientific justification for that clumsy term. Admittedly, it's a clumsy term, but it is very important to stick to it. What's the difference between egotism and self-confirmatory ideation?
Self-confirmatory ideation is clearer in describing what's happening than with the word egotism.
Yes, you are correct in that. You see, egotism is a pejorative term. There is a flavor of condemnation. You shouldn't be an egotist. It's not nice. But self-confirmatory ideation reveals to us something fundamental about the human condition. What is the human condition? The human condition is an unceasing state of existential dread. What do we mean by that? An unceasing state of existential dread. What is an existential dread or anxiety?
Yeah.
It's not exactly that. It is a doubting fearfulness whether or not we really exist. A self-confirmatory ideation is a compulsive, obsessive preoccupation with the desire to reassure ourselves that we really exist. You see, this is much more than just egotism. It is a very deep existential issue. Nobody can escape it. The purpose of metapsychiatric therapy is to alleviate this condition. It stands to reason that the less fearful we become about the reality of our being, the greater freedom there will be in expressing our inner potentialities, because it is this existential anxiety which hamstrings us, makes it difficult for us to fulfill ourselves existentially. To the extent that we live in fear, we are hampered in our freedom of self-realization. Therefore, all pathology has a common denominator, namely self-confirmatory ideation. Whether it is emotional pathology, or mental pathology, or somatic pathology, the common denominator is always not egotism, but self-confirmatory ideation. Trying to reassure ourselves that we are really being, that our being really is, because we are doubtful about that.
So then existence takes the place of God. Self-confirmation, our existence is the God in that circle, where God should be in there.
Well, you're jumping too far ahead. Wait. Now, let us illustrate a psychosomatic case, so that you may have some practical foothold in this difficult theoretical presentation. I know a middle-aged man who had a hernia, and he wanted to know the meaning of his hernia. So as we worked together and explored his mode of being in the world, we found that this man had a habit of exerting himself tremendously to influence people to feel sorry for him. This was his particular mode of being in the world. No matter where he was, under what circumstances, whether in the family or in his business world, he would always proceed to exert himself to influence people to feel sorry for him. That was his hang-up. Now, isn't that interesting? We usually think that a hernia comes from lifting heavy objects, right? But the issue is really exertion. You see? If you're exerting yourself emotionally, you can get a hernia just as much as you are if you are lifting a piano. Yes.
And we're wrong in assuming that underneath this is an implication that there is some kind of a connection to the type of physical symptoms that manifest himself and the type and your mode of being. In other words, this man whose mode of being is exertion would not come down with a headache.
Well,
Or
that
you're no
we cannot generalize. You see, it is not desirable to jump to conclusions that in every case of exertion, hernia, you may get hemorrhoids or something.
This is what I'm trying to
No, there is no specificity of a general nature. We must always discern the particular individual's mode of being in the world, and then we shall understand the meaning of a symptom. Now the question is, where is the self-confirmatory ideation contained in that case of the hernia?
The man proves that he exists by having people feel sorry for him.
Right. In his particular mode of self-confirmatory ideation took on an interpersonal character, namely, people are feeling sorry for me, therefore I am. I'm sure that I really am, because all these people are feeling sorry for me. Yeah? You see?
Didn't he, you say he exerts himself? I mean, in everything that he did a little bit more than you expected, or do you mean he physically exerted himself? I'm saying, did he do it emotionally or intellectually as well as physically?
Not physically, he had a sedentary occupation. He was...
He didn't go out and lay bricks on weekends.
No. He never exerted himself physically.
But I wanted to make clear that it wasn't a physical.
No. Only emotionally and mentally. In his interpersonal mode of relating, he exerted himself tremendously to get people to feel sorry. It was hard to sit with him in a room without feeling sorry for him. Some people found it very irritating and they got mad at him. But that could also be just greased on the mill. Because if they are mad at you, then you really are being confirmed, right? Now the result of this strenuous way of life, the strenuous mode of being was that he finally got himself a surgeon who was going to confirm him by operating on him. And he got himself hospitalized, and he had a very successful operation and came back glowing because it was such an enjoyable experience. Everybody paid attention to him, and the nurses were feeling sorry for him, and the doctors, and the wife, and the children. And he had a ball. He was most enthusiastic about his operation. And then he said, well, I'm glad that this was so successful. So then he was told, don't be so sure that the problem is over.
We call him that.
The wise and very nice fellow, it's like I told me that. So he was very startled, of course, but didn't believe a word of it. Once you see the operation was successful, I am safe. And he continued to exert himself, to influence people to feel sorry for him. He would not want to consider the possibility of the connection between his hernia and his mode of being in the world. Guess what happened?
Hemorrhoid.
Within a few months, the thing returned. Right where the successful operation went, the hernia returned. Now this time, of course, he was forced to consider the possibility that perhaps there is a connection. Now, sometimes we encounter a great deal of resistance, not to the doctor, but to the realization, to the facing up to the fact that our mode of being in the world, specifically our self-confirmatory ideation, can express itself in some physical condition. It is nowadays already accepted topic of conversation to speak about psychosomatic illness. But when it comes to an individual experience, it is not so easy to face up to the fact that our particular case is also psychosomatic. You see, it's all right in case of other people. We can see it very clearly. But when it comes to us, there is some kind of a reluctance to face up to it, which is understandable. Nevertheless, the more receptive we become to this idea, the more benefit we shall derive of it, and the more careful we shall be in our thought processes and our endeavors to find a mode of being in the world which is not pathogenic. What do we mean by pathogenic? Nobody knows, not even you, Clark?
Pathogenic would be creating pathology.
Illness producing, right. Illness producing. Now there are pathogenic modes of being in the world, and there are health promoting modes of being in the world. The pathogenic mode is always a self-confirmatory mode. What would be the health promoting mode of being in the world?
confirming others.
Confirming others, then we are making them sick. You see?
Better than making yourself.
Suppose it is your child. By the way, there is a form of parenting where the parents are constantly confirming the child, believing that they are being constructive and positive and loving, and actually training the child to think of himself in a self-confirmatory manner, and thus preparing the ground for some pathology. You see, praise can be just as harmful as criticism. You couldn't think of an example of that?
Praise of what? In particular, praise of
Praise is giving credit. If we emphasize that the credit belongs to the person, we are building up pride and vanity, personal ambition, the common denominator of which is self-confirmatory ideation, and then the good which we would, we do not, and the evil which we would not, that we accomplish. See, not many people realize that compliments and praise can be just as damaging as criticism and negativity. To be positive or to be negative is the same. Would you believe that?
Well, in your event, how would you help somebody else that is a child?
Right.
Confirm their existence?
Good. But first tell me, did you understand it? That positive, to be positive? No. All right. Now what would be the healthy? You have to first understand it, that it is possible to damage a child through praise. If the praise gives credit to the person, you're building up a self-confirmatory way of thinking.
Yes, praise gives credit to the person rather than to the creation.
To the Creator. You see, if you give credit to the person, you say, you are such a great guy, all by yourself. All credit belongs to you. You're smart, you're beautiful, you are good, you take personal credit. You teach the child to take personal credit and enjoy it and see himself out of context. Out of context? What kind of context? The existential context. The context of God. Now love if it is personal, it is just as harmful as hate. Because personal love encourages self-confirmatory ideation. Hate, likewise. Now the question, what is the healthy way to encourage a child and to love a child and to build confidence in a child so that its full potentials could blossom and flourish? In what? Yes.
I think the analogy involved with the relationship between a therapist and a client. In that case,
Certainly.
it'd be a beneficial business.
Yeah. Well, would you explain that a little more?
You don't try giving anything to, or taking anything away from, or expecting anything from the child or the client. It's just by being a beneficial presence, you are helping the person to understand what really is. In that sense, shedding light on different aspects of the patient's mode of being in the world. So that change is possible.
Now, in order to be a beneficial parent or a beneficial therapist, we must be able to see the child or the patient in the context of God. Because that's the existential reality of all of us. If we see people apart from God, just as autonomous personal entities, then no matter what we say or how we say it, we will always build up his self-confirmatory tendencies. When you give credit to somebody, you're encouraging him to be proud. When you criticize somebody, you're encouraging him to be ashamed. To be proud or to be ashamed is the same. To be vain or to be embarrassed is the same. To be ambitious or to be lazy and fearful is the same. But in the context of God, when we praise someone in the context of God, then we are saying, God loves you. You are God's beloved expression. God is manifesting his intelligence and power through you.